next thing we want to do is we want to do our Academy 101 segment where we review. This week, we're going to be reviewing meta staples along with their components to explain how you can deconstruct the list, or if you'd rather copy the list, how you can play it. This week, we are going to be covering Empire because Empire list building seems to be so prominent, and maybe we're going to get a list without Vader? Probably not, but you don't know until you see. We're going to bring our Academy 101 segment to you right now. For our Academy 101 segment, like I said, we want to cover meta lists, right? As you're preparing to go to a tournament, if you're going to prepare to go to Store Champs, there's two things that can happen, right? You're going to see meta lists because people want to win, right? People do want to win. It is a thing. Some people like the meta play. Yes, Vader crew 100% counts as a Vader in the list, just so you know, Sebwa. So that's why I made that joke. But people do want to play meta lists and people want to win. And so these are things you're going to see. And so what we thought we'd do is we would start tackling each of the different factions each week to kind of say, hey, what's out there that you could be confronted with that you have to either be able to beat or you have to be able to play to win. So between Alex and JJ, they've come up with a few lists that have kind of become meta staples in some way, shape, or form. All of them have Vader in it. Surprise, surprise. This is an FYI. And so what we wanted to do is we're going to talk a little bit about each of the different lists. We're going to talk about how to set some of this stuff up, how to play the list, and how to burn the list down and kind of what counters it. So, Alex, you want to kick us off tonight with the very first Empire list?
Yes, so this is I believe the highest count you'll see at a tournament is this general archetype. Some of the pieces move around, but it's Vader, 3 bombers, and a TIE Reaper. And this one we're giving you, it is Vader, starter pack Vader, pay to win Vader. Very versatile. This is that's the SL Tomax, the one that comes with the bombers pack, who can operate on his own mostly with that true grit. But also, if you have plasma torps, you don't want to spend that lock. Captain Jonas is still there. Jonas with Sat Salvo, barrage rockets, bomb generator, and then Major Rhymer with barrage rockets, saturation salvo, and some sort of bomb, mostly ion. You have seen seismics with delayed, and in that one list we saw concussion bombs. And then you have Vizier with Palpatine. That's pretty much set. You can do like fair off occasionally, but mostly you see Palpatine just because he helps out. The defense of the bombers allows them to still keep the focus tokens for their barrage rockets. And this list hits super hard.
This list hits insanely hard unless you fly it wrong. But this list will take Zam down to 0 health in one turn if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with a reinforced token. Not saying I've ever had that happen to me. Right.
Yeah, and some of the more aggressive builds or versions of this is the Battle of Gavin Vader, which allows them to spend a force to convert a blank into a hit. That one I think is even more deadly on the offensive piece for it. If you're going for more aggression for kills, mainly because that Vader is very, very consistent at getting 3 hits, if not crits, to start off the attacks, and then the bombers pour into you with their ordnance. Some of the other versions that we've seen of this, of course, is the customized Tomax brand with the barrage rockets and saturation salvo, which is another form of terror because that saturation salvo, sometimes it can really, really turn your natties into satties and can really mess you up for follow-up attacks on here. Being able to have Palpatine to provide that passive mod to any one of these ships is a big plus, and this list just absolutely wants to go in and wreck it. Now, as far as playing this list here, the positioning is absolutely critical for this particular list here. When you're setting this list up, you want to have a lane for your TIE bombers to be able to relatively huddle together to be able to have the same time on the same target when they want to, and then you can have Vizier and Vader on opposite ends, or at least in the general vicinity if they need to, for Vizier at least be able to coordinate when he does the ailerons boost. If not, he can go out and just claim objectives and be super fast if he needs to, or be that jamming piece in the list to help set up the saturation salvos or the Vader like locks to mess up their intended target for it here. This list can absolutely joust the best list and the other factions there because they can hit very hard. What do you guys think about setup?
For me, the so okay. So personally I feel it depends on what objectives you're playing, right? So like in my world, the bigger thing is you have to kind of keep those bombers closer together, but I don't feel Vizier, especially with Vizier's title, like with Empire Palpatine, has to stay next to them. I think you can joust and do your things if that's what you want to do, but the way I run this is, or I would run this, is I would keep my bombers kind of in a tighter cluster, and I would have Vizier on one side and Vader on the other side. And then that way I have kind of a pincer move with the two. Vizier can move extremely fast, and then the bombers can be versatile to which side of the board you have all of the firepower in. So in my theory, you leave Vizier and Vader kind of on separate sides because Vizier is able to do the coordinate if need to be if you're close enough. But in reality, it's that palp force that you're using Vizier for, right? Like Vizier is not your hammer, and if you joust with Vizier, you better make sure that they all stay in that block and they all stay in front. And the way I run Vizier is not that way. I am cagey with my Vizier, hence why I don't usually run Palpatine. I'm more of the Seven Sister, Captain Hark like build. But I will say Palp is a million times easier to run because you know what the best part is? You just flip the damn force and say, "Yep, I focus, somebody's evade right there, boom, gone." Oh, Vader, you don't want to spend a force this turn? Here you go. Merry Christmas.
And it works against Padme.
And it works against Padme. Absolutely, yes. So that's how I would set mine up.
Yeah, generally in this list, Vizier would be doing a lot of the objectives. So you kind of want to set it up by like an assault thing. You do count as two ships because you are medium. The Reapers, despite having one agility, really awesome crate carriers, just because that pre-movement boost is not a boost action, so you can still do it while carrying a crate. And I agree, Tanner, mostly with like how you'd set it up. You want to keep the three bombers by each other. Although with Tomax, with like the SL Tomax, you don't have to keep them around, which is kind of cool. You can have him with Vader and try to operate and do like a flanking maneuver with that. But if you're running like Barrage Rocket Tomax, you do want to keep all three of them by each other just so you can maximize the offensive output with Jonas. And then Vader just does Vader things, right? Like just
Vader does whatever you want Vader to
grab
do.
the scramble. I mean, if you're doing scramble, you want Vader to try to get whatever ones he can because he can do spend a force, get an action after that. Yeah, I mean, generally it's just the bombers. You point at their list, you focus, and you one straight until they're dead. Works really good against everything but like Bray.
So let's talk about counters for this particular list if you're facing off against it. Do you guys have a particular strategy for what you would attack first in this particular list?
Well, it's nice that they don't have shields.
Yes.
And you just got to focus, fire the bombers down because they will burn super fast. If you have like a higher initiative, you can like take down Jonas or Reimer pretty easily before because they are like trying to keep like you have to make them spend their focus tokens. Generally, like they try to not let you do that, keeping range 3 as much as they can. But for this kind of list, you have very little lists that can outjoust it. Um, but actually, low agility doesn't mind this too much. Like the arcs in Republic, they're tanky enough. I mean, it sucks, like getting your dice re-rolled, but you can still like born for this if you happen to roll into a focus. But they're generally tanky enough and hit hard enough with enough accuracy that you can take down some of the bombers, which I like. And for like a counter against like a turn zero kind of thing, you want to see if you can put the asteroids away that if they are trying to go for objectives, it's difficult for them to be like side by side, right? In like a normal kind of formation you would typically see, like in the old tie swarm kind of formations. You want to try to put rocks there to break up that formation in any way you can.
Yeah, I agree. For me, if I was going against this list, I think control list is a very, very good way to counter this list. Anything that can do jams, like with like mag pulse warheads, for instance, or jam actions, anything that can do ions that help control where they can move, and being in range one is probably the best way to really counter these lists. The only exception being, of course, Reimer that can shoot those barrage rockets at range one, but the reason why you want to be at range one versus two or three or versus these bombers is just because they can shoot that ordnance only at that range. And being at range one, even though, yes, it's still going to be a three die shot, not having access to that saturation salvo is huge for your ships to survive. That being said, if you're also going on the offensive and they have to spend that focus um, to survive, to make sure that they actually do get a shot, having basically neutering their offense is a big deal to really help nullify this. Crit generation is also another big deal. You know, these ships do not have shields at all. These bombers can melt pretty fast, especially with a very good crit chain. With like, you know, if you leak into a direct hit, these bombers can die extremely fast. You do have to deal with that Reaper being able to counter jam you in that instance. So you do have to make sure that, you know, turn one to set yourself up to prevent that early jam from Vizier if he does come in, being able to take target locks onto obstacles early on just to make sure that, you know, you don't lose your own focus when you're trying to get into the fray. Definitely helps out there. And once you take out those bombers, it's going to be you versus Vader. Vader will definitely hurt. Well, he can definitely punch a lot of damage through, but if you're able to have a ship that can reposition to block Vader consistently, it's going to be tough for Vader to stay in the action, especially when it comes to like the knife fights when you're in close range. If Vader doesn't have that lock, he's only going to be shooting two, maybe three dice at range one against you. And yes, he does have the force, but it's going to hurt a lot less than having a double modded target lock shot from Vader going into you. So even if you're not going to kill Vader, just denying him his actions to take that target lock is pretty huge.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're meta, like your local meta, is just overrun with something like this. The four ship Han Fen list is actually really good against this.
Yeah.
Fen being in range one is not what the bombers want to see. Um, and that auto evade really blunts like their offense. And then Han is just like you're rolling one die against me. Are you going to spend a charge to salvo it when I can re-roll it again? Like
Yeah.
it's real rough. And then he does enough damage with two shots that you should be able to chip away at the bombers with Han.
Yeah.
Probably push a damage or two each turn on one or two bombers.
All right. Anything for objectives, or should we just kind of move on to the next?
Just move on to the next one. I mean, like the objectives is be by the place with assault, hit the button with Vader, give Vizier the crate,
Yeah. And
maybe a
then
bomber or two depending on the situation.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the bombers they're mainly going to be. I think the strongest objective for this list is assault, because you're able, especially if you're able to, if you're the player playing this list, you're able to put objectives together in a close proximity where the bombers can stay together and contest these objectives from their bubble. It's going to be very hard to for your opponent to win that battle at that objective site there. Scramble also kind of a little bit difficult that Vizier is deceptively large and can go and claim and block, and Vader with his action able to use his first action to claim and then spend force to take a focus lock. Can be really really effective, and they can definitely do very well in scramble salvage. You got the bombers. They don't really care to lose their barrel roll in general, with the exception of Tomax with the standard loadout version. But they can each carry crates. They can have Vizier who can carry a crate. Vader, if he's out of afterburner charges, probably going to carry a crate. But they're probably not going to give up their reposition to do that. But I think that's probably their weakest scenario. And then chance engagement is all about the offense, to go kill your enemy. And this list is very, very good at doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, you have health. 2 of those bombers is only 1 point.
Yeah,
feels
exactly.
bad. So
Exactly. Yeah.
It is horrible. I will tell you from personal experience. All right, let's move on.
look, more bombers.
More bombers. But we got some ties. What is this? Vader and his black ties? Is that what we call it? Black
Yeah.
tie Vader? Can I
Very
call it black tie Vader?
I like.
So this one is a little more objective focused on this one here. This one is very similar to the previous list. We got Vader with 2 TIE bombers. I'm sorry, 3 TIE bombers, and instead of Vizier, we got the Black Squadron Aces in here. This one is a lot more objective focused for the fact that you have those 2 bodies and those 2 Black Squadron Aces that can go in and claim objectives and be those blockers, to also help set up shots for those TIE bombers there. Typically, they can run a lot faster and go ahead to get in the way of your opponent's list, and really help gum up lanes. Particularly effective against medium bases. So when you're facing off against like Arc 170s, or you're facing off against like Han, for instance, if you can get into his space to prevent him from going where he needs to go, you can possibly mess up where his arc is going to be. So that can potentially take away a shot from your enemy. It can prevent them from claiming objectives on their own. And generally, these ties are a nuisance. And if they are able to at least prevent your opponent from claiming an objective for 2 turns, they've already earned their worth in points. Definitely. It takes a little more skill to fly this, to ensure that you're not just giving up free 4 points to your opponents, because the ties can die very quickly, especially if they blank out. But if flown correctly, you can absolutely get a ton of points from those Black Squadron Aces, and win the objective race against your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I guess, kind of depends on your playstyle. If you want a Reaper with Palp support, or if you just want to run 2 TIE fighters. And they both are pretty successful.
I think the list plays a little bit differently, right? Like, I think the difference with this list is your TIE fighters are doing different objective pieces that Vizier's not. And they live a little bit longer usually. But they don't put out the damage. So in this list, you are looking to 100% hold people, which means you probably got to use Vader's ion missiles once in a while. You're probably going to have to. At least every other game, maybe every 3 games. Don't know 100%. But you definitely are going to have to use some ion missiles. And I won't lie and say that I've actually played against some people that play Vader and they love to ionize. They try to ionize my Cad Bane or my Dirge. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm just gonna bank and take my focus anyway. I don't usually get a target lock ever. And once I'm done with it, then what I get to do is, with Cad, if I kill somebody, I'm just gonna take a target lock then. But hey, no problem. But anyway, so anyway, that's a CIS problem. Usually people don't have to deal with that. So so I think this list flies a little bit differently. Setup wise, Alex, do you set this list up similar with the 3 bombers? Or are you going to be a little bit more spread out? How you doing?
So in this particular list, this has Deathfire, but Deathfire can usually just be Rhymer. They both functionally play the same. I mean, they don't play the same at all, but like they're
the same thing.
Yes. You do different things with Deathfire than you do. You're not straight jousting. If you have Deathfire, setup is different. If you're not having Deathfire, you would still run them in like that, like triangle kind of formation around Jonas to use this ability. If you have like Deathfire, like in this particular list, Tomax and Deathfire are completely independent. You don't have to put them near Jonas at all. Jonas' ability works on himself, so you can actually spread out if you want.
Can we sing
So
the oh wait, never mind. I don't want to get nailed with the My Name is Jonas song
oh,
by Weezer. Every time you say Jonas, I just keep thinking about this. Sorry, I'm derailing. Keep it on going. Ignore me.
but yes, like if you're running the particular one we have up here, you do not need to keep your bombers around. There's actually a fair amount of iron control in this list too, which is awesome. Those you probably can just run, Tomax next to Vader. You can still joust with all this list. It really depends. If you're bringing 3 barrage rocket bombers or like 2 barrage rocket bombers and SL Tomax, keep them near each other. If you're not, you can spread out and get some objectives. It's basically down to that. I don't think there's a particular formation that you would use in this. I mean, you keep the I assume you keep the TIE fighters next to each other too. You can. I mean,
I think this list is a little more versatile in play style. How about that? I don't think it hits as hard, so you have to be very. This is like an objective style list. I do not. I do okay. I do like Deathfire a lot, but I don't know if it's better than Rhymer, right? In this specific list. But Deathfire is making a comeback, and I won't lie and say it's kind of fun every other turn for 2 turns to be able to, do your maneuver and then drop or throw your bombs. And I won't lie and say I've been caught more than one time by them. So
5K and do the 3 bank bomb drop.
Yeah. So I don't know.
You are seeing Deathfire, like there's a noticeable uptick in Deathfire coming in, especially with the release of SL Tomax, where he's more independent. You could use like Deathfire and Tomax, and you can cut out Jonas and put in something else. You're seeing that a little bit more as people experiment with it.
I mean, could you put Rhymer in for Jonas, right? And put Rhymer with the Sriracha Salvo and Barrage Rocket, and then take one of those Black Squadron and move it to Larir, right? Like that feels like a pretty good list too. Now you got one crappy objective monkey and one good objective monkey that can also put out damage.
Yeah. I mean, you see, like Larir sprinkled in there occasionally, especially if you're not bringing a lot of bombers.
Fair enough. Objectives. So I think we talk about objectives, and I think like in Chance, you're keeping things a little bit closer together, creating kill boxes. I'm personally I'm flanking with Tomax and Vader. I'm definitely keeping Tomax a little bit farther away to ensure I try to get that plasma off without dying. Because it is 2 agility. You can die. I mean, you can die from it. And Deathfire is ramming into this to wherever your ships are. That's what Deathfire is doing. Like, let me ram into you, throw some proton bombs, then I'm gonna drop my counter nets on somebodies to run through. And God, what would be great if you could run counter nets to like flip sideways. Like you could like have an upgrade that would allow you to have a counter net sideways. I want that.
That's gross.
You can do that if you're Sol Sixa and just use the hard turn or Emon.
Ooh, JJ, we got something to think about. I like it.
That's why we got packs coming up, man. We can definitely do
that. Anyway, so and then I think if you look at Assault, you can spread out a little bit. You don't have to keep the 2 TIE fighters together. You can let one of them hang out by the solo objective that you get to place in your area, and just let them one hard around the damn board and collect your objective. I don't know. Any other thoughts on objectives that are a little bit different than what we had the list before?
Yeah, no, I don't think they do anything like specifically super special with any of the objectives. I don't think it's not like anything crazy.
Yeah, I think they're fair across the board. I think they're actually more stronger in salvage, this version of it, right? Because you got two bodies now that can dedicate, and then four bodies that can go in and contest, like the other carriers. I think this actually probably doesn't have the best staying power when it comes to assault. Because again, these are TIE fighters and they can die fairly easily, and they're very susceptible to crits as well. So I think they're a little more weaker than the other list, and not having that big medium base to contest multiple objectives, it does hurt. But still, it's a very solid list. It does well, pretty much well all around. So yeah.
All right. The last Empire list is a double decimator list in here, and we have seen a little bit of return of the double decimators. We thought it would be a little silly if we did a decimator list with
More bombers and more BSAs.
yeah.
Yeah, now for one thing that doesn't have like I was gonna say excessively bombers, but it also just still has double bombers.
It does. But the problem is if you get rid of Captain Oinkin, like you get rid of the piggy here, he you have the 7 points, you're gonna just put more bombers.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna do. So like the idea is this is not 100% meta. This is not something that like hit 100% of the top of the pattern analyzer or whatever. It's pattern analyzer is
Yeah.
the name of the app, right? Yes, that we were using. But these are all very prominent pieces that have gone together, and we have seen this. We just haven't seen this as much because people like to run that whole Vader bomber thing by themselves.
Yeah, occasionally you'll see like double decimators do well. In Michigan, we're huge. We were like a really big decimator state. I don't know why. We were always flying like 1.0. We'd fly like Rack Vader or Rack Soontir, Rack Kylo. So I'm just used to like playing against decimators. So they're not terribly intimidating. They do die eventually. But the problem is if there's only one scenario now that gets half points, you have to fully commit to actually killing these decimators, and that's like the obstacle you face with this list.
Yeah. All right, JJ, break the list down for us. What's going on with the list here?
So we're going to start off with Rear Admiral Chernu. He comes equipped with Ruthless, Starfader, Death Troopers, Agile Gunner, Tactical Scrambler, and Dauntless. A variation of this sacrifices Tactical Scrambler and Ruthless for like a seismic bomb. Captain Waken with Ruthless, Seven Sister, Agile Gunner, 000, and Seismic Charges. The other variation of this, of course, would be with Morden Key as well. Kind of similar loadout there. Major Rhymer, Sat Salvo Barrage Rocket Seismics, and Tomax Burn with Sat Salvo and Barrage Rockets there. Typically, what you're seeing from these is the decimators do tend to deal quite a bit of damage there, and they're absolutely action denial machines. Death Troopers definitely becoming probably the most prominent upgrade for ships that can carry it, which are these decimators there. Just being able to prevent you from being able to shed that stress and then punishing you for having it, it can be very very devastating for these ships. Being able to use their reinforce ability as well to mitigate or make it tougher for you to kill these ships outright can be really tough because you're trying to spend all your efforts into taking down these ships, and they're worth 7 points, but at the same time having that reinforce available just makes it hard for you to kill, and they are going to just hit you back even harder than just having the passive mod for a rack being able to turn that focus into a crit with his ability is just absolutely devastating at that I5 there. They're able to ruthless their other ships if they need to, especially with Rack and like Oiken, if he needs to take away one hull out of the 16 that they have, that's no problem, and they can have very hyper accurate shots for them to take out ships.
Yeah, and I also think with this list archetype, this is a little bit there. This is a little bit takes a little bit of practice to play because you are flying two large bases. They don't have stops, right? So you ain't stopping with these things. No matter what you want to do, they don't stop. Um, so, and I think hence why JJ has Agile Gunner on here, right? Because it allows you to kind of do whatever the hell you want, and then at the end of the turn, you just do what you need to do to make sure that next turn you get a shot. So if you know you're getting blocked, you can just rotate your damn arc then and be done with it. Like whatever. You don't even got to worry about Dauntless.
Yep. And Dauntless pretty much guarantees that that reinforce for rack every time, every turn. So
now you know what the funny thing is too, though, JJ, with this list, right? You know what the funny thing with this list is you can ruthless each of the decimators if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
Right. Now, I will be honest with you. I would argue for, and this is going to go a shout out to Brendan because this is what Brendan's been running, but I would argue that Tactical Scrambler could be interjected with Electronic Baffle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would argue that Seismics on Oinkin you could put Electronic Baffle and, I don't know, marksmanship, I guess. I don't know what else you would do with the other point off the top of my head. But
I've seen people also bring in Minister to a crew as well to also guarantee that that reinforce as well. It's just not as good once you start getting to being stressed all the time, and that pretty much turns off that ability. But that is definitely a viable option as well.
Yeah. And the other option is, and I don't know, like, does Morna have the same loadout value? But Morna is another very popular decimator people like to run.
Yeah.
Like, I think Oiken has its purpose because you can run into people and get really damn good shots. But Morna also has the reinforced to become more tanky here.
Yeah, in Morna rack lists, you'll see actually the Dauntless on Morna and Tua on rack.
Yeah.
So that way, because you're not Oiken, you actually care about the range 0 stuff there. Also, it's nice with the standard loadouts of the bombers. You can now replace like Tomax and Reimer if you like with like Deathfire and standard loadout Tomax that operate a little bit more independently. I mean, these also operate independently, but that depends on how you want to swap out the bombers or not.
Yep. So I will say, to take this list, because this list has so much health, you cannot focus on two decimators. You have to pick who you're going to kill here. Like, it is not possible, in my opinion, it is not possible to shoot through 24 health very easily. You could do it, but it is not very easily. I will tell you what does like to do it. Anything that gets a bullseye and doesn't let you have reinforce. That
something
likes
with
it.
proton cannons, maybe.
Those things do, but anything else. I mean, I'm just saying. Anyway, sorry, I keep throwing CIS in here, even though we haven't even hit CIS yet. But so obviously anything that throws crits into these things, anything that can jam them, is great counterattack. If you can jam through, I don't care if you have Dauntless, but like whatever, man. Like, if you can jam it, but like to me in this list, I think the bigger threat here is Rack. I think Rack is the larger threat, and like if you're gonna pick one to focus fire on, that's how I would do that. So, anybody else have any thoughts on counters to the list per se? Bombs, I guess, but that's obvious.
Oh, people are just bad against bombs in general.
Yeah, bombs and crit mechanics definitely mess up this list here. One of the things that we covered earlier in the show was having that deadeye shot. I can tell you that I've played against this list a few times with Marek with deadeye shot and marksmanship, and I've been able to flip over panic pilots, being able to flip over damage sensor arrays, which absolutely shuts off the reinforce for rack, and then it's just a crit fest from there. Being able to to take away those actions is very, very key, right? Because typically Rack is going to spend the force with Vader to do damage against you, and you can't be afraid of it. If you're going to dedicate yourself to take down Rack, you have to make sure that you go all in, and you have to set yourself up to make sure that when you go in and have those attacks close in, that you're gonna make them count, right? You're gonna set yourself up for range 3 engagement first, make sure that you can get through those shields, and then have your dedicated blocker to or dedicated jammer to go in there and take out that reinforce, so that way those follow-up range 2 or range 1 shots into Rack just shoot through that hole, and if you can get in crits, you're going to absolutely have a very good shot in taking out this decimator here. I can tell you from personal experience, you can take out Rack within 2 rounds of shooting if you have dedicated fire into this list. Or
What
into
list
this,
are you
this
flying?
decimator.
What list are you?
My
Are you?
Vader, my Vader list. But
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay, all right, all right, all right. I'm just,
But
I'm a little
I've done
curious
it with
here.
Resistance, and I've done it with Republic as well. But yeah, you can absolutely burn down a decimator if you have concentrated fire on it. But beware, you will leave yourself open for the rest of the list to come in and take down your ships as well. So you got to be able to gauge if that trade is worth it. So.
Yeah, a big weakness of like decimators in general is if your ships are very agile, like that they can reposition really well. You can get around which side you're reinforcing or bisect them. Generally, if you're like your larger base, you can still be in their rear half as well in their front half pretty easily. So if you have like an I-6 large base boosting ship, it's pretty good against something like that. Or anything with like a roll when you get close to these things. You gotta be really careful with death troopers though. Not to get too close, but if you have very ships that are repositioned very well, you can get around the reinforce, and then that's just a really sad decimator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So objective wise, I think this is, we don't have to talk about assault. That's an easy one. Assault, this one probably works very well with. If you want to fight them on assault, you have to spread those bloody objectives out as far as possible. But like boxes, who picks up the box here? Is it the decimators? It seems silly to do that, but who else is picking up a box here?
I mean, you don't really reposition too much with the bombers, but this is not a good salvo list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Rack's good because he generates crits, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can honestly pick up the box with any one of these ships and just just hope that you hang on to it. Honestly, it's not ideal because you don't want to give up the action for these ships, because you want to make sure that they can always have a reinforce. So it's a little tough. I think salvage is definitely the weakest for this list, and we've had other versions of this list where they just like put in like 3 black squadron ties, and they become the ejected monkeys for that, and also become ruthless fodder for the decimators. But in this particular list, you're focusing on killing the enemy and knock out their crates that way.
All right. Fair enough. Anything else before we close out of this segment? All right, I'll take silence as
No.
agreement.
Everything's fine.
So that is the conclusion of our Empire meta list analysis. If you missed it or want to go back, we have done a Rebel one already as well, and we are going to be doing Resistance, FO, Republic, CIS, and Meta Scum. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to try it. That'll be the little last faction we deal with. But we are covering all of the meta factions in an effort to try to help you be able to prepare for your upcoming tournaments here in the future. In the future, we will also have a Academy 101 specific section in the playlist where you can go after just these specific topics that we're talking about.